I warned you. I freaking warned you. I warned everybody that if you wanted to go see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, that was going to give Sony the impetus to yank Spidey out of the MCU and plop him in their own Sony Spider-Verse. You didn't listen, and now look what happens. Disney-Sony standoff ends Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige's involvement in Spider-Man. Tom Rothman, as always, comes across as the villain here. Exclusive. Not anymore. Marvel Studios President Kevin Feige won't produce any further Spider-Man films because of an inability by Disney and Sony Pictures to reach new terms that would have given the former co-financing stake going forward. A dispute that has taken place over the past few months at the top of Disney and Sony has essentially nixed Feige and the future involvement of Marvel from the Spider-Man universe, sources said. This comes at a moment when the last two films Kevin Feige produced broke all-time records. All-time records, guys. Disney's Avengers Endgame became the highest-grossing film of all time. And Spider-Man Far From Home this week surpassed James Bond's film Skyfall to become the highest all-time film grossing for Sony. Sources said there are two more Spider-Man films in the works that are meant to have director John Watts and Tom Holland front and center. The Watts doesn't have a deal for the next picture. Unless something dramatic happens, Feige won't be the lead creative producer of those pictures. There's a lot of webbing here, but it all comes down to money. And it's easy to understand why both sides refuse to give ground. Disney asked for future Spider-Man films to be a 50-50 co-financing arrangement between the studios, and there were discussions that this might extend to other films in the Spider-Man universe. Sony turned down that offer flat, and I don't believe they even came back to the table to figure out a compromise led by Tom Rothman and Tony Vinciquerra. Sony just simply didn't want to share its biggest franchise. Sony proposed keeping the arrangement going under the current terms, where Marvel receives in the range of 5% of the first dollar gross. Sources said Disney refused. Update Sony's insider counter that Rothman did offer compromises, but Disney declined. Now it's easy to say that Feige has enough on his plate, especially after taking control of the X-Men universe in the Fox acquisition, including Deadpool franchise, along with architecting the next phase of the Marvel superhero universe and building movies and shows for Disney Plus. But I'm told Feige loves Spider-Man, arguably the biggest superhero character in the Marvel canon, one of the biggest superheroes ever. He would have continued if Disney and Sony could have reached new deal terms. Essentially, Sony made the decision similar to saying, thank you, but we think we can win the championship without Michael Jordan. After all, Feige's first decade at Marvel is largely unblemished, except for Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, Brie Flatass Larson. And it's consistently been nothing short of historic. Even George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and Peter Jackson haven't seen everything turn to a hit, and maybe so only James Cameron has a success record that Feige achieved. But Feige has done it all in the last 10 years, producing and overseeing 23 superheroes with not a flop in the bunch. Well, they've all been number one openers and collectively grossed $26.8 billion. Feige this year became the producer of the top grossing films ever for the two studios, Sony and Disney, and produced 3 of the top 4 highest grossing films this year in Avengers Endgame, Captain Marvel, and Spider-Man Far From Home. This after scoring the first ever Best Picture nom for a superhero film last year with Black Panther. I can't think of a Hollywood executive producer who's done anything this close. Tom Rothman thinks he knows better. Unless Tom Rothman is playing hardball, which could very well be. Tom Rothman he really thinks he knows what he's doing. And the launch of the new iteration of Spider-Man was done brilliantly with Marvel support and help. It has been both a boon to both studios. Tom Holland's character was introduced in the Joe and Anthony Russo directed 2016 blockbuster Captain America Civil War. The film set up the 2 record-breaking Avengers films. Sony's first rebooted Spider-Man film, 2017 Spider-Man Homecoming, rode that Marvel wave and grossed $880 million worldwide. And then the web slinger was a key character in 2 Avengers films, leading up to Spidey's sequel, that this week became Sony's top grossing film ever. Sources said top brass at Disney for the past several months have sought new terms for Feige and the Marvel cross-pollination to continue. As the Spider-Man relationship grew, Feige and Sony Pictures chief Tom Rothman spoke about the possibility of a wider involvement in the Sony-controlled Spider-Man universe. Stop saying it's a Spider-Man universe! Which contains 900 characters. I'm told that Feige lent an unofficial hand with the blockbuster Venom, but I've also been told that the film is far from polished. Product that grossed $856 million worldwide until Rothman himself spent a good long time in the editing room helping it to get there. Oh God, if he thinks this movie was successful because of me, I am the reason why it was successful. I did it before and I can do it again. See, I really know about the superheroes. It is understandable that the fiscally shrewd Rothman would balk at giving up half of the Sony's biggest franchise to Marvel. After all, Marvel already owns the merchandising on Spider-Man. Does the mouse really need half of the movie universe also? Sony, so far, has decided that as valuable as Feige is, Disney is asking too high a price. Sources said that Sony reasoned they'll be fine without Feige. The creative template has been set on the Spider-Man films, and Watt and Holland are in place along with Amy Pascal, Boo, who became producer with Feige after she exited the executive suite after presiding over the previous Spider-Man iterations directed by Sam Raimi and Mark Webb as Sony Pictures chief. The Venom sequel is well underway, with Andy Serkis directing, Tom Hardy. And there is Morbius, which is dead on arrival, with Jared Leto, Kevin Hunter, another spin-off with the characters Silver Sable, Black Cat, and a Sinister Six film that got shoved, Sony, yada, yada, yada. One chance for the clock ticking, generating Spider-Man film every 3 or 4 years to get the rights. Disney has plenty of pictures to make. Yeah, but they're not going to be good. And the studio also won Best Animated Feature Oscar for Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse, a smash hit they made on their own. But it wasn't good. I'm the outlier here. It wasn't good. I warned you, and I warned you people that this would happen. I freaking warned you. I warned you. Tom Rothman's face will now adorn my dartboard. This is unreal. Actually, I shouldn't say this is unreal because we really could have, this is probably predictable if you stop and think about it. Tom Rothman still thinks he knows. He came up with the old Hollywood system, the studio system, and he still thinks he knows what's going on. He still thinks he knows the business. The business has changed. He might be playing hardball, but I don't think he is. I think he really is that. There's a saying that there's nothing worse than the guy who thinks he's the smartest mother effer in the room. And Tom Rothman is that guy. We're going to have more to say about this, but for God's sake. And don't think this is not going to be felt by Disney and Marvel. Now, who are you left with? Brie Larson? Please. The wheels are going to come off of that wagon before you know it. All right, we're going to have more to say about this. But I'm telling you, this does not look good. And this gives people an even bigger reason to dip out of the MCU. They could have had Spider-Man going forward. Look, we got Tom Holland. He's locked up for the next few years. Not anymore, you don't. Not anymore. This is a bad move all around. All right, we'll see you next time.